I think most people that end up being battlers for the environment as children loved someplace. And our parents were faithful about supplying us with bird books and tree books and amphibian books. All that contributed, I think, at the beginning. This fellow, Arthur Ogilvie, from the Santa Clara Valley Planning Department, he had this idea that we could save our wetlands, which were going bye-bye rapidly under all kinds of development, garbage dumps, sewage outfalls. Turning tidal marsh into salt ponds was the greatest loss imaginable. But this fellow had the idea that maybe we could preserve some of those wetlands by establishing a national wildlife refuge. And Congressman Don Edwards, who was a wonderful, wonderful advocate for the priceless lands in his own district, went to the Congress with the potential legislation, dropped the bills in. The bill passed the House and the Senate and was signed into law by President Nixon.
The South Bay Wetlands Coalition at that time was not the Citizens Committee to Complete the Refuge that I belong to now. That evolved out of the South Bay Wetlands Coalition. So some of the members of the coalition then came together to form the Citizens Committee. And growing out of the experience of people in the South Bay Wetlands Coalition, those of us who were new to any kind of environmental advocacy learned from the people that had come before us. And so that's how I learned about Florence and her experience and what her group had accomplished the first time the refuge was established.
The thing that drew me to the organization, certainly the people that were involved. The second thing is that I saw that this organization appeared to be extremely effective. I mean, they not only got a refuge established, they were continuing to be on the forefront for a number of issues throughout the Bay. Each of the members of the Citizens Committee to Complete the Refuge come from a local area around the Bay, and so we each have responsibilities for being the ear to the ground for what's going on in terms of possible Bay or Bayland impacts in Redwood City or in Newark or in Alviso. So that's ongoing. So in addition to the larger issues that Citizens Committee gets involved in, I still retain that responsibility for my part of the Bay.
Our group is focused on wetlands protection and endangered species issues, and I have some background in both of those areas. So I understand the regulatory perspective and how to make effective comments. I also coordinate educational outreach. So when I was helping out with my kids' schools, I saw that they were learning about important issues like ecology and protection of habitat. But it was often, the rainforest or the Arctic tundra. Well, we have important habitats that require protection right here in our backyard, and we have some fantastic places where children and their families can get out and experience why we're so concerned about protecting these habitats.
Well, what I've learned as an environmental volunteer, one thing is that a lot of people with very few resources and a lot of passion are equal to or greater than a few people with a lot of resources. As a biologist, what I bring to the group is being able to go out into the field and I collect data on shorebird use of salt ponds. I've been looking at birds since I was in high school, so I have a pretty good background on how to identify birds, how to count birds, especially when there are thousands of them, is a skill that you acquire. And so being able to do that and collect the data in the proper format, following proper protocol, that's data that can then be used to show the agencies that these are important sites in Redwood City as far as shorebird use, both foraging as well as roosting sites.
Both the state and federal governments have to have careful oversight because laws can be passed that influence wetlands, and if you aren't aware of those, you don't know how to respond to them or you can't help limit them.
I've been going back to Washington for 20 years as the joint venture representative, and so you get to meet congresspeople and senators, and you just sort of build up a little bit of recognition. When I first started doing all this, I was a Muni bus driver, and I would go to hearings in my Muni Browns. This is my opinion. that one of the reasons I was somewhat effective is that here was a bus driver coming and advocating for the environment. So because I'm on these other entities, and some of them are a mix of nonprofit and agency like the joint venture, I get to talk to people at that level, the heads of the agencies. Knowing them gives you that opportunity to be invited to take part in these processes.
Our group's name is Citizens Committee to Complete the Refuge. We helped establish the refuge beginning in 1965, and then in 1988 we fought again because we realized all we had really saved were salt ponds, but there was so much other habitat the bay itself needed. So our goal is to complete the refuge by adding another 15,000 acres. And a lot of that habitat is that transition zone, and that's important because of the threat of sea level rise.
I've learned that you lose a lot of things that you think you should have been able to save, and you must not get discouraged over that because you will have some victories and they will keep you going, and the beautiful land is there to show what you have accomplished. And that's what I've learned, that you have to dwell on those issues where you are able to prevail.